Hello guys, welcome. Today we're going to be looking at another game from the World Under 1700 Amateurs Championship, and this game is between Dadson NJOROGE and Fuad from Oman. Let's just dive straight into the game. The game is really nice. So Dadson opened with knight to f3, pawn to g6, pawn to e4, bishop g7, d4, d6, and now pawn to c3. So black is going for a modern defense type of setup with the bishop being settled on g7 and the pawn on d6, now pawn on g6. It's looking like a King's Indian defense, but I'll call it a modern because it doesn't really follow the King's Indian defense setup. So played pawn to b6, trying to fiancé to the other bishop. Bishop to g5 is played, h6, pushing the bishop away. Bishop goes back to h4, g5, bishop to g3, and now bishop to b7, taking control of the long diagonal. So Dadson plays knight bd2, defending the pawn on e4, knight bd7, pawn to h3, knight to f6, and Dadson strikes fast in the center with pawn to e5. So knight to h5 is played, just attacking the bishop on g3 and preparing to capture back the pawn on e5. Dadson plays pawn bishop to h2. Now black recaptures in the center. Dadson takes to the knight. Black plays knight to f4. Bishop takes, pawn takes, and now knight back to d3. Pawn to e5 is played, just taking matters into his own hands. But then I guess it was better to first try and castle and maybe prepare this e5 break, maybe bring the other rook to e8 and now strike in the center then. But black wanted initiative and he wanted it immediately. So pawn takes, knight takes on f4, and the position here is now getting really dicey for white. I guess the move to play was maybe knight takes knight and maybe queen to e2 or queen to c2 and try and castle queenside and bring all the other pieces into the attack. Maybe play something like bishop to b5 or bishop to c4 and continue with the game. But after knight takes on f4, I think the advantage for white is lost, and now black has completely equalized the position. So black played queen to e7. Dadson replied with queen to e2, queenside castles, and now queen to g5. A better move to try and evaluate was queen to f6. What you're doing is you're trying to apply pressure on the knight because the knight is undefended on f4. But then when you play queen to g5, after queen to e3, this is a brilliant defense for the knight. And the reason why queen to f6 works instead is after queen to f6, if he goes again and plays queen to e3, you can play h5 and bring the other bishop to this diagonal. You bring the bishop to this diagonal and continue applying pressure on the knight. You can't really play g3 because then you lose the rook, and the position is really tough for white to play. The knight is just misplaced in this position. So yeah, this is the reason why knight to f4 wasn't accurate. So bishop to queen to g5 was played, queen to e3, defending the knight, and now rook h to e8, queen to g3 by Dadson, just offering the queen trade, and now queen to f5 was played. Bishop to e2, just preparing to bring this bishop to this nasty diagonal and pinning the queen to its own king. So instead, Fuad moves the king away to b8, knight to b3, and again, this I think was the second critical part of the position. Dadson played knight to b3, and this is completely losing. You can try and pause the clock and find the winning idea, but it's really it's a really nice one once you see it. So the idea instead, after Dadson played knight to b3, the idea is to take on d1 with check, rook takes back and play knight to g6. So the reason why is because we're applying a lot of pressure on the knight, and the rook is also attacking the bishop on e2 simultaneously. So instead of this, the reason why we have to capture the rook first is because if we try and go for the line right now with knight to d6, you can play rook takes on d8. You have to take back with the rook, and as you see the position, the attack on the bishop is now non-existent. That's why we trade first. We trade first with the rook, the rook's on the d file, and after he captures back, you now play knight to d6. And here, if he takes the knight, you can even take the bishop first, threaten mate in one, and after he defends, you can even trade the queens. Rook takes queen, and now pawn takes knight, and you can see that black is up a piece and white has nothing to show for it. So this was the line that black had to spot to win the game immediately after knight to b3, but he missed it and played bishop to e4. Knight to d4 was played by white, queen to h7, rook to d2, pawn to c5, just chasing the knight away, and now the trade of the rooks happens and the bishop moves back to b7. Rook to e1, bishop to f8, bishop to d3, just attacking the queen. Queen moves back to h8, bishop to b5, attacking the rook, and after the defense of the knight on e5 is removed by the bishop on c5, the game is now just completely winning for white. I think white has an overwhelming advantage. After knight to d3, I mean, you can't capture this knight to the rook because it's defended by the bishop, and that is the reason why the pressure applied on the knight on e5 is just tremendous, because it's pinned to its own king, it can't move, and you have to defend it to stop it from being lost. But the defense is just, I think, not enough. So knight takes, pawn takes, and now knight to c4, just adding more attackers into the position, bringing the knight into the game. If anything, I mean, the position is just completely winning for white. Pawn to a6 was played, and Dadson even sacrifices the bishop on a6. So this wasn't the right idea to go for, because after bishop takes, and what do we play? Maybe knight takes, we can just move the king away from the pin, from the attack, or rather bishop to d6 is much better, because now this attack doesn't come with a check. You can even trade the queens in this position. And if you look at the position, yes, white has some pawns to try and prove advantage, but then black always has the extra bishop. So this wasn't the right idea to go for, sacrificing the piece. But then the position is so hard to play. I think the opponent just missed the idea, and after taking back on a6, Dadson took on e5, and the opponent didn't play the bishop to d6 idea. He instead went king to c7. Now this is completely losing. I mean, from here it's just easy. We can show it for the purposes of showing the entire game. So knight to f7 with a discovered attack on the king. Bishop to d6 is played, and Dadson even goes ahead and plays rook to e7 check. I mean, this is just brilliant execution. So king to b8, just, I don't know what's wrong with the opponent. He was just trying to I don't know, but staying on the same diagonal is just suicide. So knight takes bishop, queen to f6 is played. I do not even know why. Knight to e8 check, picking up the queen, and after bishop to b7, knight was played back to d7. He played pawn to b5, queen to c7, just twisting the knife in the throat of Al Fuad. He tried to play rook to c8, just trying to save his position, but after knight check and checkmate, the game was lost for black. So this is a game between Dadson and Al Fuad. A brilliant game played. Incredible and beautiful sacrifices. Rook to d7 check, bishop takes on a6. I think bishop takes to on a6 was more psychological than it was anything, but if Alford could have taken his time and analyzed, or taken his time and sort of found the idea with bishop to d6, I think he would have saved the position, and Dadson would have to prove that his sacrifice was actually worthwhile. So this was the game between Dadson and Fuad. Dadson is now on, I think, let's check. Dadson is now on 2.5 points. Yeah, he's on 2.5. He's on 2.5 points, and he's playing Al Kuwari Turkey today from Qatar. This is going to happen on board 47, I think. And yeah, I mean, we're rooting for these guys. They're playing brilliant games in Oman, and hopefully they're going to bring the medals home. So there are a couple of other players who are also playing there, and they're having really good results. I'm going to post the results, and I'm going to analyze. I'm going to give further context in the next video. So thank you for staying this long if you did, and remember to like, subscribe, and comment.